Hey guys, Hailey Lain aka Key Black here, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Cuff. And today, I want to talk to you guys about an anime series called Slayers. If you're not familiar with it, Slayers is a series that I believe was animated in the 90s, based on a light novel series published in Japan that has the absolute vibes of playing a D&D campaign, to the point where it's like, did he base this off of a campaign? This is actually how the series was introduced to me. It was one of the shows that I watched with Jess, back when I was still living in Australia, I think. And this was also before I had ever played The Rise of Balsar. It was either before or right at the start of it, but either way, I hadn't really experienced D&D, and at that point, and I kind of mentioned this in The Rise of Balsar off the cuffs, I believe, I hadn't really done anything related to high fantasy up until that point in my life either. Like, I never really had, like, the fantasy kick in my middle school or high school years. I never really got into Harry Potter. I had never seen Lord of the Rings, believe it or not. I only saw that in the last couple of years as well. And so, I kind of wasn't really sure what to expect going into a high fantasy anime. I was actually kind of convinced that I wasn't really into high fantasy to begin with. Thankfully, I was dead wrong about that. And I remember one of the first things that Jess told me about the series was, if you've ever played D&D or a tabletop role-playing campaign of any kind, while watching Slayers, you can kind of feel the players rolling the dice for their characters, like you can hear it hit the table. And that stuck in my mind because I guess I didn't really understand what that meant. It's been on my mind, I guess, because of the Bakura D&D chapters in Yu-Gi-Oh! Recently. I just reread those and was like, yeah, you know what? Rise of Balsar really was fun. You know what else was fun? That series that I barely remember, Slayers. I remember liking it, but I didn't really remember what happened in it. And so we'd actually been rewatching some of the episodes. We just got to episode 8. And I have to laugh at myself. I remember not really understanding what she meant by saying it's like a D&D campaign turned into a light novel series, turned then into an anime. I didn't really understand what the pacing was about. I was thinking, like, okay, it's kind of slow. There's not a whole lot of action going on. But having played a campaign now and looking back, there is nothing slow about Slayers at all. It is hilariously fast-paced, and there's so much emphasis on the character interactions, like knowing what it's like to kind of have that table talk and how to have that back and forth between the players and the DM and reacting to what the DM's throwing at you for that particular campaign day. It's very cozy to watch in a really interesting way. It's like you're kind of sitting in and listening to or watching the campaign as it's playing out. And it's just, there's something kind of nice about that, you know? I haven't really gotten that from a whole lot of other things. The only other things I can think of are, like, you know, with Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like Takahashi captured the way that it feels to play a D&D campaign in a totally different way in that manga. And then the only other thing I can think of is The Gamer's Darkness Rising, which is another movie that Jess showed me. If you guys haven't seen that one, it's hilarious. But that is quite literally like the story of a bunch of friends playing D&D, and you get like both the story within the campaign and the story of the players playing their characters. Slayers is, of course, more focused on the actual campaign's story. So you've got Lena Inverse, who's a sorceress, as well as Gowry, a swordsman, and a bunch of other characters. You've got Zelgadis, you've got Amelia, and a bunch of others that kind of join in on the plot as it goes along. It is extremely charming, and I'm getting kind of floored watching it again by just how much love there is in this show. It's interesting because you can kind of tell on the surface, yeah, this is a pretty tight budget show. There's a lot of lip flaps and a lot of still characters, but when the animation is there, it's really fantastic. Like, you can see how much the animators cared about making these characters really freaking awesome. The visual style is super appealing and super charming. Like, the poses that the characters are in, even in the more still shots, are just really appealing. There's a lot of just, I don't know, visually wonderful things about the show. It just, again, it makes me feel really nice to watch it. And that's, of course, in addition to the fact that the English dub is fantastic. I wasn't really expecting it to be as good as it is, you know, being an older anime dub or anything. But you've got, like, all the voice actors who would then go on to go into 4Kids shows, which is where I know them, mostly, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon primarily. But Lisa Ortiz is playing as Lena Inverse, Eric Stewart is playing as Gowry. The voice acting is fantastic, the character portrayal is fantastic, the pacing is actually a lot faster than I gave it credit for when I first watched it. Again, like, we're on episode 8, right? We just saw the big bad of the series appear. Shabra Nigdo has already been summoned. We're like, okay, 1/4 into a 26 episode series and it's already moving at like lightning speed. And it's It's funny too, because again, relating it to my own experience having played Rise of Balisros and now watching this series again, I have a lot more appreciation for how it feels, just because, like, I remember when playing Rise of Balisros, we might have, you know, a 3-hour session for the day, but it would feel like only an hour, maybe a half hour has passed, just given how much stuff would be packed into those campaign sessions, and it's just, I guess I can't really call it nostalgic because it was only a couple of years ago, but it's just, again, that really wonderfully warm feeling. And I'm really glad to be rewatching this series again now that I've actually gone back and experienced D&D for myself, so it's like, okay, I have a better appreciation for it now, and I'm really thoroughly enjoying it this time. Like, I enjoyed it the first time, but I'm really enjoying it this time. So guys, I'm gonna cap it off there. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. I'm probably not done talking about Slayers, so stay tuned, and I will see you in the next episode of Off the Cuff. Thanks again.